Welcome, everyone. This is Web3 Wednesday with Consensus, and today's session will be focused on the security considerations in Web3. It is delivered by Ian, who will, I'm sure, introduce himself. He's one of our fellow Consensus employees and a very active participant in all Web3 initiatives that we have at Consensus. Thank you so much, Ian, for making the time and creating this presentation. I'm really looking forward to it, as you know. And take it away.
Thanks, Marta. Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm Ian, and I'm part of Shuyao's biz dev team. We've recently moved under Neil Gorovich's organization, so that's super exciting times for us. And I'm going to talk about security in Web3, but I'm going to first of all start with sort of, I think, user security mainly, though we'll touch on some protocol stuff. But I'm not here to talk about, smart contract security or those sort of or cryptography or anything like that. It's more from an end user perspective. The topics are going to be touching on this concept called the cyber kill chain, which is something that applies to Web 2, and then looking at the different stages of a Web3 cybersecurity chain. And then moving on to a new concept that we're starting to work on, which is called the Web3 immune system. And then we'll finish off with ways to get involved, okay? So feel free to just, pop up your hands or throw questions into the Q&A or chat. I'll be happy to address those. It's a good quote from this guy, Stefan Napo from Societe Generale, but it takes 20 years to build up a reputation and you can just lose it in a few minutes. And I feel like in Web3, we're always sort of walking this really strange tightrope where things are can be very, very dangerous and our reputation can be absolutely destroyed so quickly. Reasons for us to take Web3 security seriously from a consensus perspective is just the huge risk that we have to our brands and to our users in what is probably the most adversarial space in the internet, given the nature of Web3 and sort of self-custody. You'll recall back in September, Vitalik's Twitter got hacked, and the hackers then sort of announced an NFT drop, a consensus NFT drop, which was targeting basically draining people's wallets who connected to that scam. Mark Cuban, he downloaded a fake version of MetaMask and lost almost $1 million worth of digital assets. And just in the last couple of weeks, this chap Julian Bouteloup, he mentioned that he had lost his CryptoPunk that he'd been holding on to for almost over 2 years. And when asked, how did he lose it? He was asked on mobile. And it was interesting. Mark Zeller, who's sort of heavily involved in Aave, sort of posting on Twitter saying, hackers are praying that you're using MetaMask and not Rabi. So we are under attack at the moment. Our brands are under attack because of the security considerations. And it's not just on the wallet side. It's also, these challenges sit on the protocol side as well. So many different, this year's been just mad in terms of the number of problems that we've seen with, Euler, losing almost 200 million back in March, Poly Network, where they sort of basically just baked up new tokens that had no value, through to sort of, the Curve Finance re-entry vulnerability, multi-chain, and many others. They just seem to keep coming at us, and it paints a very, very negative picture of our industry. And most normies that I speak to and friends, they basically just say, "You're mad. What are you doing in this industry? It's insane. It's just a scam." I think people in the ecosystem sometimes accuse us of this meme, right? We're all just sitting here, everything seems to be on fire. We're just like, it's fine, everything's fine. I think the meme's funny, but it's not true. we aren't just sitting there being complacent. The organization as a whole has mobilized huge numbers of resources to try to tackle these problems. Now, I'm not going to go into Web2 cybersecurity specifically, but if you're looking for tips on sort of overall security, then please go to Rafa Chang's training. It was mandatory for all of the consensus employees around security awareness. That's really, really important to do. I'm going to sort of speak more around security from an end user and an L2 perspective, and what are we trying to do, and what are the things that we're putting in place. The background on sort of, I guess, cybersecurity is that it's been an ongoing problem right from the early days of the internet. Back in 2012, Lockheed Martin sort of came up with this concept of a cyber kill chain, which outlined 7 steps that attackers took to basically penetrate systems and take over systems and gain control. And this was obviously sort of, it was born out of the sort of military industrial complex, with a focus on sort of a lot of defense secrets that were moving online. And so the way it was born, it is quite militaristic, and this concept was something that we spent quite a lot of time sort of analyzing and investigating and using, but it was quite difficult to get buy-in from the broader consensus, and I think in the Ethereum ecosystem, because it is a little bit different. The language is militaristic and different to the ethos I think that we have in Ethereum. Nevertheless, what we did was, and this was off the back of a number of escalations that we had last year from key partners of ours, who were basically asking us to do more to help protect users. And so what we did was we decided to take this sort of 7-stage approach and map it to Web3. And you've got sort of these 7 stages, which are malicious actor, a hacker, an attacker will go through to try to gain control of the wallet or the protocol, and then be able to steal funds, digital assets and tokens, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at each of these cybersecurity steps that we've got, just so that you got a sense of them. The first one is reconnaissance. And this is where the attackers basically, imagine like you're at home and like someone's basically staking you out and trying to see when do you leave, and do you have any valuables inside the house? And so they're basically checking you out, but they're doing it online. And they're basically trying to locate a wallet which has got high value, and then or a series of wallets that have high value, or an NFT collection, or a set of tokens, or whatever it is, and then try to work out who they can target to, who are these real world individuals, and can they be targeted? And the key here is privacy, right? Our recommendations are to try to prevent that linkage between your wallet address and your real world identity. Now that's very hard because you've got things like ENS and other things, but my suggestion would be that for your principal wallet of value, let's say, that you try to keep that wallet address away from your real world identity, and when you're using it, use things like the Privacy Badger extension or the Brave browser if you want to try to block out any sort of malicious analytic type scripts. The second tip is, once you've got your wallet set up, is just don't connect your wallet unless you really, really have to. And if you are going, treat the wallet like the address, like it's a credit card or a bank account, right? A bit of bank account information. You don't hand out your credit card to anybody. You put them into websites you trust, and you wouldn't just sort of go throwing your credit card details into everywhere. But when you connect that wallet, you're in essence sort of sharing your account information. And so use hot wallets or disposable wallets for more degen type stuff if you don't fully trust the the service or the protocol. The second stage is weaponization. So let me just see if there's any questions before I move on. Yeah, Josh mentioned there's like 8.8 billion fraud. Yeah, not just a Web3 problem. You're totally right. I agree. And we'll actually go on to that at a later point, how it's not just a problem that's unique to Web3. So the second stage is weaponization, and this is where they're basically developing the malicious smart contract or a phishing website. Now, we can't stop them developing those assets. So at this stage, I feel my recommendation is all about education. So we've got to get ourselves better educated about how to protect ourselves. So I definitely advise checking out the MetaMask Learn site, which has a section on security in Web3. There's a really good MetaMask support site, which is all about staying safe in Web3. And if you manage to read all of that and not have PTSD, I congratulate you. Consider using a hardware wallet. The ones that I am sort of comfortable and familiar with are Ledger and Trezor, but there's others, it's Coldcard, there's a few others, but do your research and make sure you get advice from people you trust. And never share. It's an obvious one. We always say it, but never share your SRP, your secret recovery phrase, with anyone ever. Okay. Right. In terms of what we're doing on our side, as I mentioned, we've got this amazing set of assets around MetaMask Learn, which are beautifully put together and are super useful. So definitely familiarize yourself with those. And then if you want to sort of do a proper deep dive into, wonderful scams like pig butchering and all sorts of rug pulls and so on, then go into the MetaMask support section in the Staying Safe in Web3 section and take a look there. It's a lot of content, so do it step by step as well. The other thing is that we have done is, or the team have amazingly put together a set of security quiz questions which add friction to revealing the secret recovery phrase. And this is basically to remind you that you shouldn't be sharing it before MetaMask reveals it to the user. On the linear side, as part of this sort of weaponization phase, what we're doing is trying to ensure that all of the protocols that we are recommending come fully audited, so that there's less likelihood of security vulnerabilities. And therefore, if you do interact with those protocols, that the funds there should be safe. And then we also have established a bug bounty program with Immunify, where any bugs can be reported, and there's sort of incentivization for reporting. The next phase is delivery. So the attacker this is the first time the attacker will reveal themselves online. So basically what they're doing is they're deploying the malicious contract on chain, or they're deploying a website or a phishing site, or posting a message, a social message or something. So this is the first phase of what they prepared being deployed out into the wild. And my recommendation here is to really watch out for phishing emails and any sort of social engineering messages on things like Telegram. If it sounds too good to be true, that's a massive red flag. And the techniques that the scammers use, they're always trying to create a sense of urgency. Most of the mistakes that I've seen are down to people who are either trying to do too many things at the same time, or are rushing before they're going into another meeting, and they're clicking on something they shouldn't have, and then it's all gone. So urgent demands, or like a fake support alert, or some sort of alert that you need to do something, be very careful, put the brakes on. If you've got a feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out, then that's also a massive red flag. Don't allow yourself to fall into that trap. Better to miss the mint than to lose everything. And then just watch out for like impersonation, both of like people you might know, like for example that Vitalik Twitter post, or from protocols as well, like people, malicious scammers trying to pretend to be protocols and announcing stuff. And then just watch out for any sort of rough around the edges website. If something doesn't feel quite right, it probably isn't. Don't give the website or the protocol the benefit of the doubt. And then any unexpected messaging as well. If you're not expecting something and it feels odd, once again, massive red flag. Quite a few users that I've met have been tricked into downloading MetaMask from a sort of malicious location, basically a malicious copy of MetaMask. So make sure that you're going to download MetaMask for the first time, that you go through our official website and get the links to the right for the right places to download it from the relative stores. And then if you are going to connect your wallet to some new dApp, start with using a hot wallet. So make sure that you keep all the valuable tokens and assets somewhere more like a cold wallet, and use the hot wallet for your day-to-day stuff. What are we doing on our side? So on the MetaMask security side, the team have been working for quite a long time on a phishing detection. We're expanding that to work with other providers of data, such as Chain Patrol and WalletGuard, to keep that list up to date. It's a massive challenge. We've been working with Fishfork previously. It's a massive challenge because as soon as we publish, it's an open source repo. So as soon as we publish anything, the scammers know that they're flagged and they can then pivot to another URL. So it is a bit of cat and mouse, but it is a important and useful tool for us to continue to block URLs that are malicious. In addition to that, we're now working with a company called Blockade. They're basically doing sort of internet-wide scanning of URLs and websites, determining whether those are dApps or not, and then scanning the dApp to see if it's malicious or not. So this is more like what we call proactive dApp scanning, where we're basically taking those URLs and then determining, is it a dApp, and then saying, okay, now that we know it's a dApp, let's have an in-depth look at the RPC calls that that dApp is making and see if they have sort of footprints or fingerprints that are malicious, and then tagging. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're then using the Blockade piece a bit later. We then move on to exploitation, which is where the attacker is now sending you a convincing message to get you to either sign a transaction, or they're trying to get you to share the secret recovery phrase, or more in a sort of like almost like a more Web2 type attack, where they're trying to get malware onto your device. They could also, if they're targeting at the protocol level, they could also be targeting the protocol or the bridge by sending a malicious or a set of malicious transactions to that protocol. The recommendations at this stage are to install transaction insight snaps, so that the team, I'll talk a little bit more about it on the next slide, but the team have worked really hard on a number of security provider partners who can provide those. If you're using a different wallet to MetaMask, then I would suggest looking at transaction simulation extensions. There are a number of them out there. A couple that I trust are BlockFence and Hexagate. And if you are going to this a protocol, do your research. Work out if you can trust it or not. Usually, you can get some indication if it's been audited, if it's been monitored by someone, and make sure you're not sort of putting in TVL that could be drained. So on the MetaMask snap side, there's a whole series of transaction insight snaps, and the nature of these are very, very, can be quite different. Some of them are more sort of, decentralized and open sourcey, like Porta. Some of them are more sort of from the traditional sort of threat intelligence space, like BlockFence or WalletGuard. And then you've got sort of the specialists who specialize around transaction simulation itself, and understanding what's going to happen to the transaction, rather than just doing sort of malicious transaction detection. So there's a mixture. So, it's interesting, Pat sort of tried these out after the launch of Snaps and mentioned that it was actually quite useful to have a few of them installed, so that because they give you different messages, and you get some of them are good for certain things and some are good for other things. So it's worth not just betting on one, but having a few of these snaps downloaded and enabled on your extension. On the linear side, we are what we want to do is lead by example to establish a culture of security within linear. And we've been doing a lot of research around event engines that monitor what's going on chain, and sort of trying to combine that maybe with some off-chain activities, and then be able to trigger events that can warn us that something bad is about to happen. Typically, when a bridge gets attacked, for example, it's not done in one transaction. The attacker, first of all, has to deploy their smart contract ahead of schedule, and then will then trigger the transactions. And there usually are a number of transactions, and that gives, it could give us, anywhere between, a minute and a half to 10 minutes to maybe even a few more minutes of warning. And so there is a small window where we can try to do something about these attacks before losing funds. We're losing significant funds. So we've put in place bridge monitoring with Hexagate, and we are, and they're sort of basically, monitoring the linear bridge and making sure that it's safe. And there's a number of different techniques they use. And then we're also looking to expand further ecosystem monitoring, both with Hexagate and a couple of others like Hypernative and Cybers, to encourage the rest of the ecosystem basically to start monitoring their own protocols, and showcase that we're doing it from a linear side, and hence that the rest of the linear ecosystem should also be putting these sort of measures in place. And then we're also looking at sort of the establishment of a dashboard around economical risk powered by Gauntlet to help users understand the risk that they're taking. So now we're on to a next phase called acquisition, and this is where the attacker is either compromising your machine with malware, or they're convincing you to make that signature, right? So you're about to press the sign button, right? The recommendation here is to opt into the new MetaMask security alerts within experimental. So this is a new bit of functionality we've just launched. And you'll get this pop-up saying, stay safe with security alerts. And then if you click on the enable security alerts, it'll take you into the settings section under experimental, and there under blockade, you can just toggle this on. So it's an opt-in at the moment. And why have we put this in place, and why don't we just rely on snaps? Well, the most of the snaps at the moment, what they do is they take your transaction and they send it to an API. And the API then returns with some information, and that involves and most Web3 wallets, they're thinking like, do I compromise on privacy or do I compromise on security? So before we move forward, Marta, would you be able to push up the poll, and we'll just run a quick poll on what's more important?
There's also I think Joseph wants to ask a question, so I'll allow Joseph to talk before that, if that was all right, or do you want to do the poll first?
No, pop up the poll, and I'll answer the question while we're doing the poll, because it takes a couple of minutes anyway.
Okay, so the poll is launched. Joseph, do you want to ask your question? I think that's a no. Drop us a line in the chat if you want to ask a question, but for some reason can't speak.
Yeah, I love some of the comments, by the way, like Nicolas saying, hide your hardware wallet in a very complicated place, requiring a door with a key or a safe. And Josh is like, he strongly believes that hardware wallets just add friction, and that's what we need. Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% behind it. The number of times that you just want to click on something and then you realize that you've got to go and dig something out, or go to a different location to actually get the thing. It's very useful. It's frustrating, but very useful. I'm with you guys. Right, how are we doing on the poll?
About 77% of participants voted, 78% voted. Joseph is asking the question if hardware wallet is 100% safe?
100% safe. At the end of the day, you could have your hardware wallet right next to you, and you still try to sign a transaction on a malicious website with that hardware wallet. That transaction will then drain your wallet. It's because at the end of the day, the hardware wallet is just a bit of hardware that allows you to sign that, to click the sign button, right? If you're interacting with a malicious smart contract, you're even with a hardware wallet, you are at risk. The beauty of the hardware wallet is really that, one, you know, if your machine gets taken over, the keys aren't on your machine, and two, what Josh and Nicholas have been mentioning, which is it adds a layer of friction to being able to sign something, and you can't just sort of FOMO into something mad just because, you know, you think you're missing out. Let's have a look at the poll.
So the poll is you can't probably see the results. So
no, I can't.
Only 9% of participants chose privacy. So they think that privacy is more important. 27% believe that it's or think that security is more important to them. 64%, unsurprisingly, would like to both have a privacy and security. Thankfully, none of the respondents chose neither privacy nor security.
Awesome. So this sort of confirms what we've been doing with Blockade, which is, you know, this is an industry first, which is a privacy preserving module inside MetaMask, which provides a security alert on your transaction to tell you whether you're about to have stuff stolen or not. It's something that we've been working on for almost a year now with them, and we're super proud of it. As I said, it's available in the extension under opt-in, and we hope to then now expand it to mobile to bring in more chains. At the moment, it's Ethereum, but we will cover more chains, and we hope to, and then we will then debate whether we make it more widely available. But that's sort of those are decisions for later on, once we sort of see how things are going. But this is, I think, you know, if there's one thing I did nice out of all of this presentation is turn this thing on. It's your most valuable protection, I feel. The second most valuable will be the snaps, in my opinion. Right. So let's assume that you've clicked on this you signed something, and we're moving into what we call command and control. And so the attacker now has spending authority on your address. So they've either got your private key, or they've got some sort of approval or a permit to go and sell all of your NFTs or whatever. And so your wallet and your computer are now set up for being drained, basically. So my recommendation here is, it's basically at this point, it's almost too late for MetaMask. We can't really do much about it, and it's almost too late also for Linea. Though there's things that we're investigating, but it's very hard to do anything at this stage from a consensus point of view. This is really up to you guys to try to revoke those permissions. My advice is make sure that you're super familiar with how to revoke permission for an approval or a permit that you didn't mean to get. Just go onto Uniswap and give approval to some USDC or whatever, and then revoke it. Just try it out. It's really important to be able to do that, because when you think you'll least need it is when you'll be desperately scrolling through Etherscan trying to find the right button, and you'll miss it by a few seconds. And I've been online with a number of individuals who have been in exactly this state where I'm telling them to revoke, and they haven't been able to revoke fast enough. You know, you're literally talking about, you know, maybe half a minute if you're lucky. And so you have to, if you realize that something's gone wrong, and most people do very quickly, you have to be able to revoke super quickly. The other piece would be to revoke periodically. So just keep yourself fresh with revocations, and take revoke permissions from NFT marketplaces. it just reduces risk of you losing the funds. And yeah, and then if you do get scammed, obviously make sure that you can get there really, really quickly. There's a great MetaMask support page on how to revoke smart contract allowances and token approvals. So I would highly recommend that people go and check that out. And there's a great blog on approvals and permissions as well. So I would also highly recommend reading that. Actions on objectives. So this is like the last stage, and this is where the attacker is basically draining and transferring the assets out of your possession. So really, you know, this is, I would say in 99% of the cases, it's too late. But nevertheless, if you do fall victim, know who to contact. So that should be support.metamask.io or the support of your relevant wallet. There are sort of techniques being developed around using MEV to front run these transactions. So you sign the transaction, it's gone to the mempool. And then the idea is that you then subscribe to a service that can, you know, get ahead of that transaction and drain your wallet before the attacker drains it. There's services like SafeRoute and WebSC out there that do it. I'm a little bit nervous and skeptical about these services at the moment. One, because you're giving an approval to someone else to drain your wallet, and you need to be absolutely certain that that approval is safe. And is being stored safely and can only do certain things. So there's a risk in giving an approval to drain your wallet to someone else. And secondly, you know, attackers can use private mempools so that they're not visible to the broader public. And while some of these companies do say that they can even get access to these mempools, I'm not convinced that those are sort of long-term viable, and therefore I think that it's so this front running is an interesting idea, but I'm at this stage I'm not convinced about it. If you want to have a look at it and do some research, by all means, but please be very, very, very careful about signing permissions to drain wallets. Somebody will probably slap my hand and say you should never even mention it. You know, there are other options that are coming out. Like there's a number of companies looking at insurance products to be able to, you know, take out insurance on your wallet. Those tend to be quite expensive, but they are a way. And then there's, you know, organizations that try to provide fund retrieval, companies like Chain Analysis, there's Cybera, there's a few others that are sort of, you know, and they will get in touch with law enforcement and try to trace funds and then get them restored. But once again, very, very difficult things to do. So nice short list of things you need to do to keep yourself safe. And you don't need to read through them, we've been through them all. But I think the summary is like, this is still super, super complicated and it's really hard. And it's, you know, until we sort of get this down to something much simpler, I feel like we're not ready for prime time and we're not ready for sort of consumer grade Web3 services. And so I think there's still a massive amount of work for us to do here across both the consensus organization and the broader Web3 ecosystem. Now, the good news is that this isn't the first time we've seen these sort of problems affecting an entire industry. You know, as Josh mentioned, you know, like we've had phishing for ages. You know, in the early 2000s, I was rolling out email systems and we were just being killed by the amount of phishing viruses, which were triggering more emails and all sorts of horrendous activities. And so it's very, you know, and so what we were doing with those email systems, we were layering in antivirus, anti-phishing. The other layers that we were putting in, which I think we need to be wary of and aware of, were spam, because there's a ton of spam coming out. And I think we need to be very cognizant that spam will come to our wallets if we start to enable messaging and social and sort of, you know, messaging snaps and so on. We need to have a strategy for addressing spam in the Web3 space. And then also the risk of being having legal intercept imposed on us. So most, mobile systems, mobile networks, email systems, internet systems, they have, legal interception backdoors where, with the right warrant, a specific address or mobile number or whatever can be intercepted, and all of that data then flows into intelligence service databases. And so we also have to be very cognizant that as we sort of move to a next phase of protection, that we don't open ourselves up to being vulnerable to being asked for providing legal interception, which would then completely destroy the trust with our users, I feel. So on that note, then, we're moving on to establishing a Web3 immune system. So this is a concept that I've been discussing with, and actually before we get into the immune system, I just wanted to say a big kudos to so many teams within Consensus who are working on these challenges, whether it's the Snaps team, the confirmations team, the security team, the research team, the linear team, and many, many others. Like, there's just so many people involved trying to tackle this and improve the situation. So, definitely that meme with the, it's all fine with the firewall. We're absolutely not being complacent. We're putting a vast amount of effort, resource, and dollars behind this. Now, I was in Tel Aviv with Barbara and Harry Denley and Dror and a couple of others, and we were sort of meeting with security providers there because there seems to be a bit of a hub going on in Tel Aviv around this sort of expertise. And it was interesting how we were commenting on how militaristic the cyber kill chain was, and the sort of ethos side of it and so on. And we started discussing this idea of an immune system, and how actually what we're trying to do isn't really like what was being done by the military industrial complex in 2012. This is more of a parallel system, like an immune system. Now, the immune system, like when we talk about, illness and so on, we do talk in sort of these sort of combative terms, like protect yourself from infection, I'm fighting off this cold, I need to shield myself, or I'm battling this illness or whatever. So there is, just in the sense of being immune, there is an element of, being in an adversarial environment. But the interesting thing about immune system is, one, it's very sophisticated and complex, with lots of different types of cells, types of systems, even organs and so on. And I think there's a lot of parallels between the immune system and what we're trying to achieve in the Web3 system. The immune system itself, it's a parallel system that defends the body from infection, and it's trying to protect the body's own cells. And so we've got this combination of cells, proteins, tissues, and organs. And the immune system itself keeps a record of every single germ or microbe that it has ever defeated, and it remembers them. And so it can recognize when they're trying to then get back in, and then fight them off with the right sort of antibodies. And so these these sort of microbes can be bacterial, they can be viruses, they can be fungi, they can even be abnormal cells, right? And it's interesting because we even within the immune system, we talk about nodes, and there are nodes within the immune system, and obviously we have nodes within Web3. So there's lots of interesting parallels here to talk about. Now, there's a ton of ways that a natural system and a Web3 system behave similarly, right? And especially in the Ethereum ecosystem, more so than, let's say, Bitcoin. The Ethereum system and natural systems, they evolve and change a lot. We have lots of VIPs and layer 2s appearing, different account types, and new types of dApps and so on. So there's this constant evolution. The natural systems, like, they're made up of all of these different layers, let's say, whether it's highest level, things like biomes and species, down to sort of lymph nodes, proteins, and the cells. And we've also got the same concept in the Web3 system, where we have this concept of at the higher level, you've got the blockchains, which could be equated to, let's say, biomes. And then you like drill right down and you've got like sort of nodes, which connect to the blockchain network, and down to wallets and addresses, which are almost like the address is almost like the equivalent of the cell. These infections and the scams, they evolve and they adapt. So every few months, something new pops up. Whether it was seaport farming last year, or sort of permit 2 approvals this year, or whatever. Something new. The scammers are always trying to probe something new in what we're developing to see if they can get away with their scams. And we do have visibility into the systems. The equivalent of the blood test in our world is like an indexer and nodes providing data visibility of what's going on. And many of the sort of the security providers who play in this sort of Web3 immune system do use those services, and then layer in a huge amount of artificial intelligence on top and pattern recognition to try to detect these malicious patterns. And then lastly, sort of following on from that, there's a ton of companies doing R&D, and in the natural side of things, we're looking at vaccines and medication, and on our side, we're looking at lots of different sort of security provider services and options for users to subscribe to, or wallets to sign up to, or even services to be available to layer 1s and layer 2s. Now, as we sort of establish this sort of immune system, the poll basically indicated that privacy and security are super important. I think we also need to remind ourselves that we shouldn't compromise on these 3 pillars, which are don't compromise on user security, don't compromise on our privacy, but also don't compromise on decentralization. And I think that one thing I was proud about the organization was the work with Blockade meant that we didn't compromise by layering in an API and becoming more sort of using a centralized API. We still kept to that sort of philosophy of decentralization and maintaining privacy whilst improving security. So I think at the back of our minds that we need to always keep these 3 pillars up there as super important, because if we compromise on these, then we may as well just be building a Web2 project. So ways to get involved. Just do a quick time check. So we've got a number of there's tons of initiatives going on within Consensus. We've got a cross-functional Web3 security working group that Matthias has set up, which is trying to establish our next phase of strategy for security, starting with how do we define sort of security parameters and measures for next year. Where Harry's team are doing a ton of work around research and classifying the sort of current threats that we have, and I think that we should also be. We were also working with lots of partners to help us on those. The Linear team are definitely working with a number of security providers to understand the possible new layers of attack. Then we've got to classify these layers and sort of establish these layers within of the Web3 immune system, and then work out which areas would benefit the ecosystem and also keep us true to our ethos. So I think what we want to do is be very careful to be sacrificing our ethos just because we want to get something into each layer of the immune system. For example, it may not make sense to do something at the sequencer level on Linear, for example, because that could be viewed as sort of eroding censorship resistance, for example. And then taking these sort of areas and identifying the mechanisms which can support that layer, and establishing OKRs within the company that will help us achieve those. I think we also need to create an accessible Web3 security language, because I think it can be very, very difficult to. I'm probably just as guilty as anyone talking with acronyms and talking with with an assumption that people understand what cold wallets or cold storage is. So I think we need to create accessibility of the security language to make new people comfortable with this space, and then just get a 12-month plan in place to support establishing this Web3 immune system. So those are the sort of the steps that I've been discussing with others. An example. This is an example of sort of how an immune system layering could look. You've got sort of everything from like off-chain scanning of URLs and social networks through to, you know, what we're doing with blockade and the snaps around address transaction scanning, and possibly layering in more address scanning if that makes sense. Definitely address scanning on the on-ramp layer to stop investment fund malicious investment scams, and then sort of look at on the network side, what can we do to not bring in censorship, but to bring in flagging of the flagging of malicious activity, and that could be at either a firewall level, it could be at the node or sequencer level, and then you even go down on chain to the actual smart contracts themselves, being able to do things like bytecode analysis, or having sort of clever protocol protection, which allow where you basically add in additional capability into your smart contract, which would flag if something is untoward is happening with that smart contract, and then establishing circuit breakers, which would either pause a protocol or maybe move a specific malicious transaction to the side until someone can review it and make sure that it's not trying to steal funds. And then last but not least, and this isn't exhaustive by any means, but the ability to move from trying to detect what's malicious to trying to highlight what's safe, and that may be the future for us, and that's through things like reputation, trust protocols and networks. I think the new attestation service with things like Verax and the Ethereum attestation service, those are super interesting for us to look at. There's a number of interesting new stuff that we're looking at the MetaMask side, about sort of establishing trust networks, and so I think that whilst I don't think it stops us from trying to detect what's bad, I think this brings another layer to the immune system, which allows us also to flag what's safe and be and provide more of a safe city type experience to new users. And I think this presentation is sort of almost like a little call to action for everyone, in the sense that everyone can help on this journey, because I think it touches so many bits of our company and our ecosystem. Whether it's on the support side, on the research side, on the marketing side, education and MetaMask Learn, on the L2 Linea, whether it's engaging with startups, setting up working groups, or some of the projects that we're doing, trying to sort of aggregate information from different sources, attestations. I'd love to make more headway around the security sub-DAO for MetaMask grants, for example. Our investments, I know the core dev team have been quite active in this space, and I think there's more we can do there. Continually evolving and doing more with snaps, and expanding what can be done through snaps, and allowing snaps to become more potent, and allowing more sort of on client side stuff there. Events in the market, being able to support the establishment of new decentralized security protocols, for example, investigating secure RPC nodes, and so on. So I just think that there's so many areas of the company that, and I know that we've got our priorities and it's hard sometimes to prioritize on this alone, but I do think it's worth considering as part of your 2024 sort of plans and OKRs, whether you can incorporate a security topic into what you work on, to contribute to this immune system, because I think it's absolutely crucial for our success. And I think if we can get this right, then I expect users will feel safer. They'll start exploring and doing more stuff. And I know that I hold back. I don't click on most things because I'm scared and I'm worried. And even if I've got a hot wallet, I still don't want to lose whatever's in that little hot wallet. And so I'm hesitant to do stuff. And I would like to be free to be able to do a lot more. And I think we will both expand the number of users that will try it out, and we'll expand the number of existing users who are willing to become really regular and heavy users. And that is really the secret to getting broad adoption of Web3 technology, is by making it consumer ready and for users to feel safe. So that sort of brings me to the conclusion of the presentation. I'm going to have a quick look at some of the comments and questions and see if there's anything that anyone. There's quite a few here. Marta, are there any questions you think that I need you to call out?
Yeah. So Joseph was asking, is there any way to establish the security perimeter, like what the traditional network security does in ISO networks, layer 3 or 4 or 7, to form the Web3 immune system?
Yeah, I think that I think using the word security perimeter is probably not quite the right wording, but I think we're trying to do something similar in linear, right? Where we're trying to create a safer space. Now, the problem is that I think it is it's a fine balance between sort of allowing permissionless innovation on linear and providing a safe space on linear. So I think it comes. I don't think we can achieve. I think it's impossible to achieve with a decentralized system. I think it's impossible to achieve 100% safe perimeter, let's say, on a network. I think it's possible to create sort of trust networks where people can confine themselves voluntarily to those sort of trusted environments, and that could include sort of like the concept of the safe city within MetaMask, but more broadly, like the concept of maybe a safe city or a safe land, let's say, in linear. Which users can feel safe in. But a perimeter is hard because at the end of the day, it's almost impossible to detect a rug pull in advance. It's almost it's very hard to know whether a novel protocol that we haven't seen before is malicious or not if we don't have a signature that gives us an indication that something similar has done something bad before. So I think there's an element of trying to establish sort of safe areas, I would guess. But great question. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Another question is, Tibor is asking, there are phishing URL filters in some of ad blockers, for example, AdGuard. Would it be possible to add a Web3 filter to the filter list?
So we are adding Web3 filters. Well, we already have a number of, amazing contributors to our phishing list. So the ETH phishing detect list, if that's, Tibor, what you're referencing, that is a Web3 phishing block list, let's say. The challenge with the block list, though, is that, first of all, our ETH phishing detect list is public, and so the scammer can go and check if their URL has been blocked or not, and then go and dial up another URL. So that's one challenge, and so then we're always sort of slightly behind the curve. And the second thing is, even if it wasn't public, the scammer can still go and check on MetaMask if their URL is blocked or not, and then pivot. So it's an interesting challenge, and there's one that we're thinking a lot about, and I've been discussing some very novel ideas to take this on. So watch this space. I think we're going to be doing interesting evolution of phishing detection over the next 12 months.
Awesome,
Right.
super cool. We are coming up on time. I'm just checking if there are any more questions. Oh, Clemens is asking a very good question. Is there a checklist for people to follow? Something native to MetaMask that's more descriptive, so the base security pieces are handled?
You know, I love that idea. You've just got me thinking about like, you know, could we incorporate some sort of UI to sort of check the health of my wallet? I know that Wallet Guard and a couple of others do this, but I think it's more to do with the wallet, the MetaMask wallet rather than the address, let's say. I love that idea, and I think that is something that we should think more about. And Clemens, I'm going to ping you later and have a discussion, and maybe we could trigger something for next year as part of next year's plan.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you so much, Ian. I will let you have a closing remark if you want any, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and super insightful presentation.
I think my closing remark would be, Marta, that I don't think a single solution can fix this. I don't think either MetaMask on its own or Linea on its own or even consensus on its own can fix this. I think that this is a massive ecosystem initiative. Secondly, I think within the ecosystem, I think we need lots of participants and providers to help us, because the scammers are evolving, and it's a very organic thing, and we need to have an ecosystem behind us that's also evolving. And lastly, as I said, I think it touches everyone, and therefore, even if you've got an idea but don't have time, feel free to ping me or Luca or some of the other guys in the security team. We're interested in ideas and thoughts, and if you've got something that pops up that you think could be useful, we need the sort of collective intelligence of this community and ecosystem to tackle this problem. It's not something that's going to be done by one team, and no one. And this is such a new area. We're facing threats that have never been faced before, and as I said, we are in the most adversarial space on the internet. So lean in, and any questions, reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a DM with anyone.
Amazing.
Marta, thank you so much for your time, for scheduling this, and I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you so much, Ian. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot, even though I thought I knew everything. So really appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you on the next call. Bye.